What's up, everybody? My goodness, almost the end of day 3 of what an amazing conference so far. It's so good to be hanging out with you all, and thank you so much for hanging around and coming to see this talk. My name is Nash. I'm a developer advocate at a company called Sonar. Sonar, if you don't know, provides static analysis tools that you can use in your applications to help you build clean, maintainable code bases. We have been hanging around at the conference. We've got a little booth. Obviously, there's not much time, but if you do want to find out more, come down, find us before the end. We'll be hanging out until the very death. Get this. I think we might have given all the glasses cloths away now. Otherwise, my name is Phil Nash. You can find me all over the internet as Phil Nash, I guess. In as many places as I could get that handle, you can find me there. I love connecting with people, and if you ever have any questions, obviously, feel free to reach out on any of these platforms. Today, I want to talk about passwords. Well, the title of the talk is The State of Passwordless, auth on the internet. But we can't talk about passwordless without at least considering passwords in the first place, because they're terrible. I hope you are sort of in agreement. That's why you might show up to a talk about getting rid of them, because you are hopefully of the agreement that they are terrible. But I have some reasons just in case you need convincing. First up, Google did a survey back in December of 2018 in which they asked a bunch of questions about people's account security. And they asked one including, how often do you reuse passwords? And so this blue section here on the right says 52% of people said they reuse passwords some of the time. Well done. I guess that's some sort of an amount of honesty, I guess. Reusing passwords some of the time is a sort of imperfect way of dealing with it. I like the people in the green section. 35% of people said they never reuse passwords, and I hope that we all number amongst them. But I'm really terrified of the 13% of people who said they reuse passwords all of the time. These are the people with one password, the piece of text, not the app. It's terrifying. Or, I guess, they only have one account. Could be that. Single sign-on. I've only signed on once, and I had one password, and that was it. Good. The problem with these numbers actually turns out that the same survey asked who uses a password manager, and they said 24% of people said they use a password manager. Now 35% of people said they never reuse passwords. So there's an 11% of people in there that either have incredible memories, only one account, or they're lying. And it could be any of them. It's probably not only one account. It could also be, I guess, a number of post-it notes around their monitors. Although I count that as a password manager, because if your physical security is such a problem that people are reading your passwords off the thing next to your monitor, you have a different problem, a bigger problem. You have somebody in your house. So 24% of people use a password manager. That's quite good, I guess, but it could be better, right? That's 3/4 of people who are leaving their own memory up to remembering passwords. I'd always like a list of the top 10 passwords. This was produced by NordPass at the end of last year. I always think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 normally comes top, but in 2022 apparently Password has managed to top it. Well done, Password. I really like how in at number 3 are slightly less lazy people, where they can make it all the way to the end of the keyboard for a long and secure password. I also like guest and QWERTY, just beautiful passwords all around. So people are still doing this. People are still picking bad passwords all the time. So NordPass is a password manager. I don't know how they're gathering. Their users are just putting bad passwords into their management, I guess. It's terrifying. And then the problem is, if people pick good passwords but they're reusing them, we have that issue in which other websites and applications on the internet are just handing the passwords out to people. If you are, I hope you're aware of the site haveibeenpwned.com. If you're not, it stores or it tracks all public breaches of data, allows you to enter your email address or your phone number and check how many times your data has been leaked over the internet. which ones are like unencrypted passwords or just sort of data. I've been in so many breaches. It's very disappointing. Every single time you get another email saying you're in another one. That breaching, I was a person who used the same password all the time at one point in my life. I think we've all been through it, surely. But I absolutely lost access to my Spotify account and my Skype account one time because it was leaked by, it was Adobe or LinkedIn or something like that. That was sad. And it was a weird experience as well. I managed to get back access to both of those accounts eventually. The Spotify one was fun because I went through the normal process with filling in a form online and things like that, and they came back to me and said, we can't verify that you're the owner. No, you can't. So I DM'd them on Twitter, and I was back in within an hour. It's a different security issue there. And meanwhile, once I managed to reset access to the Skype account, I logged in to find out that somebody had been using that account to proposition men in French for marriage, I think, weirdly. I never actually stored like a screenshot or any of the data because I got so weirded out by it. I just went to try and delete it all and just move on with my life. Especially because like they were acting as if they're a woman and speaking French, but they still had my username. So super weird. Anyway, I got back access to them, installed myself a password manager, and now talk about passwords. So that's life. And then this is my absolute favorite thing. It turns out you can just go and ask people for their passwords, and they'll tell you. Coming up next is a clip, a video from an Australian comedian called Naseem Hussain, who took a clipboard out onto the streets and started asking people questions, weird, awkward questions, and some of them were, what's your password? Now, some people respond correctly to this, but it gets terrifying after a while.
No? Is it N-O?
Yes.
What is your credit card number?
I'm not going to tell you.
Do you have an email?
Yep.
And what's the password for your email?
I shouldn't be giving you this.
She's absolutely correct.
Survey. We'll find more here. What is your internet banking password? Yeah, is it a number? What's a number? Okay, great. And your PIN number?
On the streets, just a clipboard gives people so much authority that this guy, he's got a lanyard and a clipboard. Yeah, exactly. I particularly, what I like about this also is that for some reason this got subtitled, but only the bit where he said the password, and then the subtitle is stars. So people would just hand over their password to you. So it's bad. Passwords are terrible. That is why we need to get rid of them. But we have a long way to go with that. We have the technology, but we also have consideration for what we have in place already. You see, obviously security in general is a set of trade-offs, and when we're dealing with web applications, things we'd like people to use, those trade-offs, I think, kind of end up being between user experience and security. We can't not have security because people breaking into accounts and propositioning men in French is a bad thing. But without the user experience, especially of something like login, which is a feature of so many applications, but never the feature somebody is coming to your application to use, having that user experience to get them through that process and do the actual task they intended to do is important, and getting them through that safely and securely. So, if we consider passwords on the kind of two axes of user experience and security, turns out the experience is actually really bad. It's hard to remember good passwords. It's hard to choose good passwords. You sort of need a password manager, this third-party piece of software that nobody actually tells you about when you first start using the internet. And so it's bad. It's a bad experience. So how about the security? Well, we know that. We've just been through that. It's also bad. We've spent our entire time building these sites that have just a bad experience. It's easy to break those easy passwords like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When passwords are leaked, as they are being done all of the time, users then use those to take credential stuffing attacks and hack into your accounts where you've reused that password. And I haven't even mentioned phishing yet, but of course they're vulnerable to that as well. So passwords, it's bad. What have we been doing with our lives? Obviously, our first answer is to use a password manager. But, like I said, that's a third-party thing. It does help, though. Like, the experience becomes better. If you are a password manager user, you know that you can autofill your passwords in. You never have to know your password anymore. You get a unique one per site. It's a good experience. And it's more secure. You end up getting generated long and secure passwords and unique ones. There is still vulnerability to phishing. No one's stopping you copying and pasting that password into an account. Although, certainly in the case of, I use WebAuthn, and that certainly doesn't offer up a password if it's on a different domain to the one it was saved on in the first place. So it actually does help a little bit more. But of course, the problem with password managers is that not everybody uses them. We can't make them all use them. So we have to consider other ways that we can encourage people to pick long, unique passwords that they don't have to remember. Can we improve this? Well, we actually do have the technology to do this. And I think I've surprised many people in talks like this that sometimes it's very simple to do. You see, first up, HTML is right there ready to help us out. The autocomplete attribute of the input element is a magical little piece of technology. I absolutely love it. I didn't realize I could feel this way about an attribute, but I do. If you put autocomplete as new password on an input element like that, then browsers will suggest to you a new secure long password. This is Firefox offering me a securely generated password. And of course, that's going to encourage people to store it in the browser's password manager as well, which again, better than nothing. Maybe not the most secure places, but better than not using a password manager. And then the input element goes further, or the autocomplete element goes further to make it easier to. It gives hints to the browsers and to other assistive technology for what can get filled in here. And autocomplete username, if you put a type email, that's absolutely suggesting to the browser that that this is an email, that's a username that we can autofill here. That's nice. We have different ones. So we saw new password on the previous slide. This is current password for offering up an existing password in place rather than generating a new one. And that works really nicely, particularly on those pages where you want to change your password and you have 3 inputs, 1 for the old one and 2 for the new one, so they match. And using the correct autocomplete on that is going to stop people kind of either auto-completing their old password into all 3 of the form fields, or that. So HTML makes it easier, and adding an attribute, oh my goodness, that's easy. That's a nice way to start things rolling. But then there's the credential management API. Now, this is an API that's actually been around for 7-8 years, maybe. It's been around for a while, and it's not very popular because I don't think people talk about it enough. And it's cool. It's cool because it allows us to, in this particular case, control the data going in and out of the browser's password manager. It allows us to store and retrieve credentials in the browser. And this will actually be useful over the course of this talk. We'll see more and more of the credential management API. But right now, I'm just talking about password credentials. And so this is effectively all the code you need to store a password credential in the browser. We check to see if password credential exists, and when it does, and we have a credential that we understand, that we know, this is either a registration or a successful login or a change password form, you can create a password credential and then use the navigator credentials.store method to ask to store it in the browser. Now this is going to pop a permissions dialog to the user saying, hey, do you want to store your password in the browser? It actually looks exactly the same as the permissions dialog if you don't do this. But the important thing is that if you have asked for that permission in the first place, it means you can get those credentials back out again. And using navigator credentials.get, passing the object with password true to it, will pop a permissions dialog to the user to say, hey, do you want to log in with these credentials? If they respond yes, then we get an object back that has the username and password. It looks, you can do it silently as well, in fact. You don't have to do the permissions dialog, which is a neat thing, although it does make me a little bit uncomfortable that people are just sort of automatically logged back into a site. And so you can set that up with unmediated as true, and that allows a seamless, no interaction login, which is quite cool. But you do have to remember in that case that when somebody signs out, you don't want to be automatically signing them back in again. And so you just call on prevent silent access on the logout, and they won't be automatically logged back in. They have to choose to log in the next time. I say this looks a bit like this. This is after a successful login, or in my example app, it's on the way through two-factor authentication as well. But like at the top there, we get that save password. Do you want to save it in your browser? This is on an Android device, so actually it's offering to save it to your Google account, which means it's also going to sync across devices. You can log in one place, and it will offer it up in another place. Yes?
Third-party password manager, does that tie in with these APIs, or do you end up with your passwords?
So I asked this when I first found out about the... Oh, sorry, the question was, if you're using a third-party password manager, does that tie in with this at all? I asked this when the API came out, and I think it was an evangelist from a browser who I saw talking about it, and they said not yet. And I don't... That was 7 years ago, and I don't think it does yet still. But if you are using your password manager, you probably already have your workflow with that, right? I know in WebAuthn, which I use, it now autofills with Command-Shift-L, and I don't have to worry about all of this. It does the saving for me. I think this is useful for encouraging users who aren't using those password managers. We want to make them get more secure. So if you're using a password manager, you're probably safe already. The experience past this, like I said, this is going to sync across your accounts, so you could then go to your desktop in this case and go and log in, and it would offer to log in. And this, it's a horrible domain, but that's just because I was testing. When you come back, that's where you call on navigator credentials.get, and this is the permissions dialog to say, hey, do you want to sign in as this account? And you just click sign in. It's a one-tap, one-click sign-in process. That's quite nice. And it's more secure. You probably don't have to worry about knowing that password anymore or typing it in. It's a one-click thing. So the experience becomes good. It's a nice experience. And there's no need to remember passwords. You're not typing it in. But on the security side of things, we actually haven't necessarily made it that much better. The fact that we've maybe added that autocomplete attribute and it's offering to generate a secure password doesn't mean a user has to choose to do so, and they can still put in password or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so it's still vulnerable basically to all the existing things. So better experience, just as vulnerable. Shame. Still recommend it. It's a better experience. So what we do, of course, is we over the years we've said passwords are bad. What do? We need to add a second step. We need a second factor to make things more secure. And we reach for two-factor authentication, the idea of having a device or something you own, or potentially biometrics as well, although I'm not such a fan of that in terms of two-factor authentications, because it's real hard to rotate your fingerprints when they get leaked. Two-factor authentication, you have probably received text messages like this, with 6-digit code saying, hey, you can use this to log in. This is good. Obviously there are, not obviously, there is also authenticator apps as well. I'm mostly going to concentrate on the SMS part of this because it can be better. Because looking on the two factors here, we've actually regressed the experience now. That's the shame. That's the sad thing here. We've now got to this two-step login flow. You tend to need another device or an application on your device or to be able to receive a text message. If you happen to be underground or in another country and you're not connected to the network, you can't log in at all. And so this experience has kind of been somewhat regressed. But the security side of things, we can kind of now overcome the password problem by making the second factor and the combination of the two of them much harder to break through. Doesn't stop them being vulnerable to phishing, though. If you can phish a username and password off somebody, you can phish a username, password, and 6-digit code off of them, and then plug that straight into the other application that you're trying to hack into. And finally, in terms of SMS, there are targeted attacks on the SMS network that you can perform. If you happen to know somebody's phone number and want to steal text messages from them, you can totally do that. SMS is remarkably broken. It turns out, this is known as it's the SS7 problem. SS7 is the system question.
Yeah, just one thing I would like to mention. The problem with this
The problem is that you can be used to track via. That is absolutely true. Yes, and in I'm talking about in cause of trade-offs here. Is being tracked more or less a bad thing compared to keeping the account secure? It's a trade-off, and different people have different answers to that. So absolutely agree. This is a good time to talk about Twitter. Actually, earlier in the year, where Twitter decided to turn off SMS two-factor authentication for people not paying for the service, and a whole bunch of people like celebrated and went, SMS is insecure because of these potential targeted attacks. And the problem is they turned it off for the people not paying for it. People who have large accounts and probably do find it worthwhile to pay for Twitter were still allowed to use the less secure version. That's a bad start. It also turned out that it's a significant percentage of the people who you have two-factor authentication turned on in Twitter use the SMS version. So that actually just turned off a whole security feature for them. And sure, it was encouraging them to go to an app-based thing, but so many people, I'm sure, couldn't be bothered to change that kind of thing and would just drop the feature instead of using it. And the reasoning behind dropping it was because Elon Musk was claiming that Twitter were being scammed to the tune of several tens of millions of dollars by people just sending enormous numbers of those two-factor authentication codes. Now, that is a problem, but it's not the user's fault. It's not a user problem. And there are, in fact, ways to avoid SMS. I can't remember the word. Yeah, like just sending thousands and thousands of messages. If you were to, for example, rate limit those things, then you probably find you're not spending $60 million a year on text messages that are useless. Also, companies like Twilio provide this kind of thing are actually coming up with products and solutions to fix that automatically for you as well. So Twitter just removed security for people, and that makes me sad. Hopefully, it does actually encourage people to use an application, but removing two-factor is worse. Can we make two-factor authentication better, though? It's not the greatest experience to start with. Like I said, that it regressed the experience compared to just a password. And so I'm going to reach back to HTML to start with. It's always a good start. Using the autocomplete attribute again my favorite attribute, the autocomplete attribute with one-time code as a value will cause iOS and Mac Safari to offer to autocomplete an incoming text message, which is cool. I also like to point out that input mode numeric is important here. This is a text field, not a number field, but you want the number keyboard to show up when people want to put things in. Just make it easier. I got a little video of this, nice. This is that experience of logging or getting a two-factor authentication code sent on Safari. We go log in, the message comes through, and there is the code sitting at the top of the keyboard. I think that's quite nice. It only took 17 characters to make that happen. Pretty neat, I reckon. And then when you hit it, of course, it autofills and submits the form. It's nice. And then, I said actually, if you're fully bought into the Mac ecosystem, you have your messages coming through to your laptop, and you use Safari on the desktop, then it will autocomplete on the desktop as well. I think that's quite exciting too. We can log in, the code comes in, and we get offered an autocomplete on the desktop. Bit of a magical little experience, actually, that. That's kind of what Apple are good at times, I think. So that's Apple and iOS, but it only works on Safari, which is a shame. Instead, Google and Chrome browser decided they'd come up with a JavaScript version of this instead. And we have the WebOTP API. The WebOTP API is actually just the credential management API with a different name. It turns out it's all credential management all the way down in this. It's wonderful. You see, last time we were working with the password credential, and this time we can work with an OTP credential. You do have to make some changes, though, to... and this works with text messages. They haven't got it to work with authenticator apps yet, so that's why I don't spend too much time on them. But in the text message, you do have to change a couple of things. In the bottom line of the message, you now have to start with an @ symbol, the domain you're logging into, then a space, a hash, and the number, the code. Adding the domain there is a way to kind of... this is going to help us autocomplete things, right? And that's going to stop it autocompleting onto not to the site you're logging into. So it's a phishing protection, which is cool. And then, like I said, we then reach for the OTP credential in Navigator credentials. In this case, we don't need to store any credentials. We're just asking to get them from the browser. And so we ask Navigator credentials get, passing an object saying OTP, passing a transports property, and passing an array which can have one element in it, which is the string SMS. It's an interesting choice of an API there. I actually think it's good like that array can only have that option in it right now. And like I said, I'd like to see a future in which authenticator apps are integrated into this kind of thing, and we can say the transport is app as well as SMS, and give it the options either way. This is going to pop a permissions dialog to the user saying, do you want to allow the browser to copy from your messages into this page? And when the user accepts that, because it seems like a lovely idea, you get an object with a code property on it that's the thing, and you can pump that into your form field and move on. And it looks a bit like this. This is now on an Android device. We're going to go log in. And then in comes the message. We actually see the text message coming at the top. And of course, Google has done work over the years with Android to make it easier to copy the number out of there. But this is even easier, where we get to this bit which says, would you like to allow Chrome to read the message and enter this number? You click allow and move straight on. Glorious. So if we consider this on our experience versus security side of things, our two-factor authentication, whilst we added an extra step, we've now managed to reduce it to the most minimal kind of version of that. It's actually a lot more, it's much nicer. And if we add that with the password credentials, the password credential side of things as well, our login can be 2 minimal one-click steps, which I think is very cool. We didn't take away from the fact that you still need an app or you still need a phone to receive a text message and phone signal and the potential privacy implications of that. But the security is now great as well. We've got the two-factor authentication. Leaked passwords are not going to be a problem, and only targeted SMS attacks, which are only really a problem for high-value accounts because they do take some effort. I was going to tell you how it works. As a telco, anyone can be a telco these days. It's amazing. You just need the right hardware and software. In fact, you don't even need hardware. If you've got a cloud, you just need a server. And it turns out, because telcos and things were invented a long time ago, when it was hard to do that, trust was inherent in the system. The only people running telcos when it started were governments and large telcos who all knew each other. And so there's no authentication in that network. So you can be a telco, and then you can say, hey, this phone is roaming on my network. So if you need to send a message to them, just pass it over to me, I'll get it to them. And there you go. You can steal people's SMS like that. It's not trivial to do, but it's not hard. Oh, I know that's the same thing. It's not trivial to do, but it's possible. That's why it requires a targeted attack, and you need to know the person's phone number. Two-factor authentication is not just solely SMS. We have security keys as well. You probably have a YubiKey or something like that, which you use particularly with business things to look after your security there. And this is powered in the browser by WebAuthn, the Web Authentication API, which of course is the credential management API. They just keep giving it new names. Web Authentication, WebAuthn allows the browser to generate a public and private key pair, which you can then use, share the public key, and keep the private key on the device. And that allows you to sign things. In this case, this is creating the public key, or public-private key. We ask Navigator credentials to create a public key. The server sends a challenge, a set of random bytes, and we put some other details into this as well. Oops. such as sort of the RP. This is the relaying party. That's just the domain it's on. The keys will be tied to the domain, so it's impossible to use this key on a different domain. So anti-phishing, so that's not a problem. We add some user details as well, and then at the bottom the algorithms there are just the two widely available algorithms for the encryption. And so we asked to create this. That's going to pop a permissions dialog to the user to say, hey, do you want to create a public key for this site? And when they say yes, it will create the public and private key and return the public key and sign the challenge with that private key. Send the challenge, the signed challenge, and the public key back to the server, and the server will be able to use the public key to decrypt the challenge and verify that it was the original challenge, and thus connect that public key to your account in your browser. Then on the other side, when you come back to log in again and do the challenge, the second time, we just call a navigator credentials get with the public key. We get another challenge from the server. In this case, we're not creating it. We're just using the existing private key to sign this challenge and return the signed challenge to the server, at which point the server uses the public key that it has stored to verify that signature, verify the challenge, and log you in. Brilliant. This works over multiple different ways that authenticator keys can work, whether it's USB, Bluetooth, low energy, or NFC. Like all of those are available via this method. And this is quite cool. Like using a security key like that is actually a very minimal step, right? It just tends to include an interaction with it, just touching it. And so the steps are indeed minimal. We've still got two steps, but again, minimal steps. You do, of course, need an authenticator key, though, which most people in the world don't have. They cost money, and people don't tend to want to pay for money. You can use your phone. That's true. I've never managed to do it, though. But, people also don't install authenticator apps and for two-factor authentication either. People don't do stuff. We have to help them along the way. Otherwise, they'd have all used a password manager, and we'd be fine. We wouldn't even have this discussion. And then the other thing is that the private key sticks with the device. So you have to, if you're using multiple devices, move your key around or be able to register multiple security keys. But on the other hand, this is public-private key cryptography. We've got a second factor helping us out, and it's unleakable. It's just a public key. All you can do is verify challenges that were signed with the private key. Give your public key away to everyone. It doesn't matter. It's public, so you can't leak it. And it's phishing resistant as well. As we saw, you have to tie it to the domain that you're on, so it can't be used to log in to some other domain. You can't give up your private key. It's stuck on the device, and you can't get at it. It's cool. But that issue, I think, mostly is that, in fact, that most users in the world don't or won't have this. So this eventually brings us to getting rid of passwords. I think we do need to improve the experience as we go, improve the security as we go for the existing things we have, but now we can get rid of passwords as well. I do get to take a little tour through magic links here. Magic links being the idea where you put an email into the sign-up process, and the site will send you a link to your email address with a unique generated code that will log you into the website. Oops. Look, they're all right, magic links. I guess. There's no need for a password anymore. That's lovely. But it does rely on email. Sending emails is a pain. Receiving emails is a pain. Emails not going to spam is a pain. But my biggest problem with it really is just friction. I was already annoyed to be having to be sent to my phone to pick up a text message with a 6-digit code in it. If I have to open my email, I'm immediately distracted by all the other emails that have been waiting for me. And it's just friction. I don't like it. But it's pretty secure. Like it's just sending that unique link over. Yes?
One day there could be an integration like it reads your text message that auto-pulls the code.
You want things reading your emails? I mean, maybe, perhaps. I think we can do better. Excuse me, sorry. It's pretty secure, but yeah, I just don't like it. I also have one application I have to log into for work, in which it has an email, a password, and then sends me a magic link, which is very annoying. Like if you're gonna send me a magic link, don't make me write a password in as well. That's pointless. That's a password full kind of experience at that point. So magic links, they're all right, but I don't think they're the real answer. The real answer to our problems here, the solution for everything, is the world of passkeys. Now, passkeys, of course, are just the credential management API. Actually, the multi-device credentials, they're actually just the web authentication API, so a subset of our credential management API. But they are multi-device credentials. This is what makes them sort of more usable. You see, what they are is web authentication, but they use the platform authenticator. So in the case of my laptop here, it's the fingerprint. In the case of my phone, it's my Face ID. It relies on the platform authenticator, which is good because users are starting to have devices that have platform authenticators on them. And what it does is it allows you to verify the user on the device. Because it uses that platform authenticator that is secured by a biometric, the user is verified on the device. But those biometrics are never shared with a third party, with the server, with your application. They stay on the device. And so you get to verify the user there, and then because it's using the same thing as web authentication, it's signing a challenge that authenticates the user with the server. It's effectively the same flow of setting up a public-private key and then verifying by signing a challenge. And so then you're authenticated. And so these are multi-device credentials because they sync across your devices. So that's why it relies both on the platform authenticator and the fact that the platform is in control as well. And then there is a mechanism for using it across devices where the sync is not possible. And so because this is tied to the security platform itself, your passkeys can share across Apple devices if you're in the Apple ecosystem using Keychain or iCloud. If you're on Google devices, if you're on Chrome OS or Android, you can sync across those things. But if you're trying to use Chrome on a desktop or another browser on the desktop, you can't sync there. But there is this other cross-device mechanism. Question?
The private key that's being used to sign the challenge there.
Yes.
That can't be the private key that's baked into the hardware of my phone if it's going to sync across devices.
No, absolutely. Sorry. The private key being used to sign the challenge is not baked into the hardware. It is generated on a site-by-site basis based on the relaying party.
So how is the private key that's baked into my hardware that provides me that authentication, that strong biometric authentication,
Yes.
actually interacting with the process when I'm using it synced across devices? Where is the
Where is it? Yeah.
from my hardware token coming into the process?
Well, it's not the hardware token now. It is your device, and inside the hardware authenticator that is, the fingerprint or whatever the secure enclave is on these devices. It is the case that we now have to trust our platforms, Google or Apple, pretty much the only two doing it right now, in order to do that. But I'm not. There is. I will dig this out. There is a good article from the Chrome team. Actually, it might be the Android team because it's the same thing. It's available in Android and iOS as well. That actually does explain this, and that's what I should have boned up on before you asking difficult questions like that. I will share that out with links at the end. This is just a snippet of. I love this because JavaScript is becoming Java. When we want to use passkeys like this, we have to check a few things because it's web authentication but with some extra bits. And so you have to ask two things: whether there is a user verifying platform authenticator available, meaning, does it have a fingerprint or a Face ID or something like that? And then, is conditional mediation available? And that is actually asking whether the browser is capable of offering up the available keys that you could use to you as part of the interface. Once you have those, and you can ask for them, you then do the web authentication much the same as before. but with a couple of little added things. In this case, just at the bottom there, you have to add the thing saying we need authenticator selection. The authenticator attachment must be platform. That ties it to the fact that it is your device platform identifier. And then require resident key means you are saving the key on the device, which allows it to go through the syncing process as well. Have a question? Go for it. Are not YubiKeys. They are different.
Hello.
The passkey has to be. A passkey has to be the platform authenticator. The platform. Thank you. And not a YubiKey. Passkeys are not single key devices. The intention is for the syncing. And so, yeah, if you want to implement this as a website and still allow people to use YubiKeys to log in, then you would do two things. But yeah. Oh, and this is what it looks like. This actually is the full demo of how the thing works using a demo on a site called passkeys.io. When you go to log in, this one offers you to set up a new account with a passkey. And this is me in Safari on the desktop. So that's the permissions for the thing. It's doing the platform authenticator, makes the private key, sends it back to the password, to the server, and you are logged in. Nice. And then you can sign out, sign back in. It's going to ask again. I did this demo a few times, so it had a bunch of options, but it's the SonaSource address there that we're looking for, and we're fingerprinted and signed in again. Now we go to the phone. This was a live done recording, and the passkey is now synced across to the account already. So we can just hit sign in with a passkey. It gives me all those options. Again, we're looking for my SonaSource email address, which is at the bottom. Face ID, sign in, and we can see we're logged in. And it's the same passkey across both sides. And then finally, if I wanted to go to another browser, Chrome for example, this does not have syncing available. So we can still ask to sign in with a passkey. And what it's going to do is say, I know that we don't have a passkey saved, and give us this QR code instead. We can then scan the QR code with a mobile device, and that's going to offer to sign in with a passkey. And it's going to give the same list of passkeys that application has. The one at the bottom, SonaSource, we Face ID. It shares the passkey back to the browser and allows you to sign in. That's not stored in that browser. If I was to sign in again with that browser, I would have to go through that process again. But that's quite nice. The fact that we have that available to do so works. Now, what you would need to do for this, you would probably still need to build multiple keys so that when you do find somebody logged in, you can offer to save a new passkey for their new device. We have a question. What's the account recovery process? Absolutely. Well, so since it's synced to your platform account, these keys are always available to retrieve from that either Apple keychain or Google account. So actually, it does make that recovery sort of both easier and no longer in your own hands. So it's sort of a benefit in both ways there. You still need an account recovery, but in this case, it sort of relies on an account that is probably more important to you. Like your Apple or your Google account is something you would look after, whereas every other website in the world is less important to you, probably. A lost device. Well, because it syncs across things, as long as you can always log back into your device with that account, you can always access it again. Eli? Come back to you in a second. That's all right. So we now have no need for a password. We do require a platform authenticator, so not all devices will have this, so maybe we can't entirely drop passwords and the other methods of logging in, but platform authenticators are more and more popular. And this syncing behavior makes it a bit more magical experience for users as it works across devices. It's also then phishing resistant. We're still doing public-private key cryptography here. It basically does sort of both factors of a two-factor step in one go, with our ability to verify the user on the device and then authenticate using the key or by signing the challenge. And it's unleakable again. We're public keys in the domain, so it doesn't matter. Now, question.
So is it a secondary store of private keys in your Google, let's say, Google account, and you unlock access to that with biometrics?
Yes.
Are those passkeys stored in the Google account encrypted?
Yes.
How?
Don't know. We'll share. We'll dig that blog post out again. I'm not fully a security professional. I'm a fan of of authentication and making it better and things like that, which is why I'm certainly not a cryptographer, and it's also why I get to put this on the screen. Is it perfect? Maybe. It's certainly better. Passkeys are certainly a better experience and better security than everything we have existing, and it doesn't take an awful lot to implement. Are there other drawbacks? Of course there are. It's browsers. There's browser support to be dealt with. But this is actually supported in most major browsers now. The video demo there showed Chrome and Safari, so it works in all Chromium things. It is in Firefox is the one that we're missing out on. But it looks like Firefox should support it by the end of this year. But I'm not capable of promising features being shipped by a browser. But I think Firefox is basically the last one to come on board. They're obviously enthusiastic about it, but it's just not done yet. It's coming. 1Password are probably going to have to change their name because they are on board with this. They realize they know that passwords are bad and they have an entire business based on it, and they're trying to implement it as well, and implement their own version of a encrypted passkey store. So that the 1Password extension will be able to handle this for you as well. And that will then work across browsers and devices. They're so behind it as well that they're also trying to encourage more people to implement this. And so at passkeys.directory, 1Password are maintaining a list of places that now support passkeys for login. I've already updated my Microsoft account. You can do that to log in via passkeys only, which is very cool. And you can add them to GitHub, but only as like a second factor, not a full login experience. There's other things. I think eBay and PayPal in the US right now, they're rolling it out. Support passkeys as a thing, but go check all the other people implementing this on passkeys.directory. It's very cool. So ultimately, what are the recommendations? What are the takeaways here? First up, I think we should start building this in. I want to see more of this, and so I recommend we build login experiences where we detect passkey support and offer it up first. Make it the default, and there is probably going to be a bit of a learning curve for users as they would expect. Their expectations are going to be changed, but the more we do that, the more we can get over it, and offering it first is going to encourage that greater security. It's important to support multiple passkeys. Like I said, you don't want to necessarily have to always go through that QR code route to log in if you are doing across different browsers. So offering up to save a new passkey for a new browser is a good idea. Then we fall back to passwords with two-factor authentication. Don't leave a single factor as a way to get in to an account. You're only as strong as sort of the weakest security that you have. So fall back to passwords with two-factor authentication. And then once users can use their passkeys, you can offer to upgrade them and remove old and weak credentials. Like I have deleted my password for signing into my Microsoft account because I have the passkey set up and I'm confident in that. Like I said, I do have some links on all of this. I will share them out in the Slack room, actually. That's probably a good place, and probably on Twitter as well. That doesn't include currently the that blog post that I'm going to share about how the secure syncing is done, but I will add that as well. And that's it. Let's get rid of passwords. Again, thanks very much. My name's Phil Nash. I'm a developer advocate at Sona. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you.